Thank you so much for joining us. I've got Tony with me today, and we're going to be talking about the idea of how technology is changing the talent landscape within the insurance industry. Before we get going, Tony, can you give everybody a quick introduction?
Awesome. So I'm Tony Cañas, and I basically wear two hats. On one hand, I run Insurance Nerds, which is a uh, blog, podcast, video podcast, conference organizer, book publisher, all of it around insurance. And on that side, I do chatwithtony.com, where I give free career advice to any insurance professionals who signs up. So I get a really good view of what's going on from the talent perspective in the industry. And then my day job, I work with the Jacobson Group, which is the largest and oldest executive search and staffing firm serving the insurance industry exclusively for the last 50 years. On that side, I'm a sales guy. I sell staffing services to insurance companies. So I spend my days chatting with business unit leaders at insurance companies about their talent needs, basically. So I get a really cool 40,000-foot view of insurance hiring, both from the perspective of the talent and the companies.
Well, you are the perfect person to pick your brain on this idea then. So, to get us started, I just want to talk a little bit about, from the insights that you have both with talking with those candidates and companies, how is technology really changing that talent landscape and maybe impacting things like hiring and retaining talent within the industry?
So I think that the biggest thing for the last several years has been the extensive use of applicant tracking systems, or ATS systems. Or the S is repetitive there, but or ATS. And basically, whenever you apply for a job, and they make you apply on the website, and that resume goes into this system, and there's a lot of keyword matching, sometimes AI that decides whether your resume actually gets seen by a human. So that's a big piece of it. So learning to play that game is a big piece of it, because the ATSs tend to be kind of black holes where resumes die. So learning to play that game is a big piece of it. And then on our side, we're using more and more technology also in the finding of the people in the sourcing process. We're using more and more technology. So yeah, technology is becoming a huge piece of how we recruit and how people find available jobs. And I think where it gets really interesting is the even your people who are happy at the job are likely getting targeted if their skill set, what we call passive candidates, if their skill set is in demand, which within insurance, pretty much every skill set is in demand. So even if your people are happy, they are getting targeted because of all this technology that exists today, and because we're all on LinkedIn.
It's really interesting that you brought up the applicant tracking system, because that's something I was having a conversation with someone about recently. And even depending on which system people are using, the tense of how you have a skill or something put into your resume cannot match the algorithms that those tools are using. And you could be a perfectly qualified candidate that never gets seen by a human, like you were saying.
You
And
have to play
so
the game.
yeah, it's one of those like catch-22s of, do you
Mm-hmm.
use the tool or do you not? In your conversations with employers, do you hear them targeting technical skills at all of a specific caliber when they're looking at bringing in new candidates?
100%. Number one, the technology side of insurance has for years been one of the hardest things to recruit for. Part of that is because it's an area where we compete with every other industry, right? And we compete with the tech industry itself for those skill sets. So yeah, it is on that side. They're very actively recruiting people with very specific technical skills, but also even for roles that traditionally didn't require any sort of tech background. So, for example, underwriting, more and more, the underwriter is moving away from doing deals on the back of a napkin, where the primary skill set was the relationship management with the brokers, to more and more needing to use high-tech tools and needed to be able to digest all of the information that we have now from all sorts of databases and all sorts of third-party systems. So there's a lot of great research on how the underwriter of the future is a much more technical person that is really comfortable with technology and with grabbing data from a lot of different places. So that's very much in demand.
So going off of that idea of those roles that maybe were traditionally other skill sets were involved in, and now that skill set is changing and we're looking for more technically savvy people, does that change the way that your customers are thinking about recruiting people? Because you mentioned this idea that like insurance is now kind of competing with this talent across industry lines. Does that change the way that they're seeing going after new candidates within the market?
I don't think they are yet, but most insurance companies think of themselves as fast followers, not as innovators. And they think of themselves as fast followers. In reality, they're kind of slow followers. So the obsession in our industry, for the most part, is with experience. Everybody wants somebody who has done the specific job we need them to do before. So no, they're still not changing the way they approach recruiting, even though we are using better and better tools.
Okay. And so going off of that idea of the underwriter who maybe is now starting to use technology to really drive those decisions, and you know, in my space, being in the spot where we're automating maybe repetitive or mundane or simple predictable processes, how are organizations maybe thinking about this dynamic, or from your perspective, how do we change our training process for new candidates that are coming in and looking to gain that experience that you just mentioned, if they don't have the opportunity to interact with maybe those more simplistic processes?
This is where the discussion really gets fascinating. So we come from a world of very old technology. A lot of insurance companies 10 years ago were being ran on literally 40 and 50-year-old technology, COBOL and Fortran, and mainframe systems. And there's been this massive transformation in the technology that we use. So little by little, we're becoming much more able to automate things and to have pass-through underwriting, and Lemonade, for example, made a lot of noise about paying a claim in 3 seconds because of the use of AI. So all that technology coming in and automating things is great for the customer, and it's great for our expense ratio. But it does bring the question of there will always be somebody towards the more difficult aspects of what we do, and ultimately, especially in commercial lines, some of what we do is more an art than a science. So it's hard to automate away. And how will your people get to the point of having that skill set to be able to make those more difficult decisions if they never went through the entry level piece, right? If we completely automate, and it hasn't happened yet, but if we completely automate, for example, personal lines underwriting, but we still need underwriters to make final decisions on difficult cases and on high net worth type cases, how are they going to learn it if it's been automated? So I think that it really comes down to, eventually we're going to have to start talking and thinking and talking about purposeful inefficiency, basically, where hey, we have the technology to automate the process from A through, I don't know, W, but we're gonna need to pull some of that down, and let people actually handle part of that process so they can learn it, even if with so for example, even if the system can handle 100% of the underwriting process, or 100% of the claims process for simple claims, we might want to let people handle 20% of claims to get them that experience. And I haven't seen anybody talking about it yet, and I do think it'll be a really interesting and really important thing for our future, to make sure that we do continue to have the people that are properly trained, have the right experience for the more difficult jobs that are impossible to automate.
So I'm going to ask you two final questions, and one is going to be on the side of if I'm a carrier, and these are broad, so we'll see where you go with these. But say I'm a carrier and I'm looking to make my company attractive to new talent. What is your number one suggestion to me as a carrier to make myself an exciting employer for people that are on the market for a new position?
Culture. It really comes down to culture and your employer brand. But every carrier is proud of their culture, and that's good. But if your culture is 75 years old, and if it still feels like 1985, when when they show up to their first day at work, or their second year at work, if it still feels like there hasn't been radical change in the culture, if the culture is too formal, if the culture is too risk averse, which is very typical in insurance, if the technology that they work with on a day-to-day basis, if you're putting the brand new kids out of college in front of a green screen, they're just not going to stay. And the more that we can update the culture to feel fresh, to be truly be a place that they want to work in, and taking into account the difference between millennials and Gen Zers, for example, is important. Not confusing, not thinking that they are all millennials. The more that we can invest in having a great culture that they want to work in, the better off we'll be in both attracting them and retaining them.
Great. And now I want to flip it around
Mm-hmm.
and pretend that I am someone that wants to find a career in the insurance industry, whether I'm in a different industry and I'm interested in coming in, or I'm fresh, that Gen Z, fresh out of college, and I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for my first job. What would you say is either a skill that I should highlight or maybe acquire to make myself attractive to insurers?
So, if you're an entry level employee and you're just coming out of college and you're looking for your first insurance job, chances are the hiring manager, the number one problem they have is they have a constant influx of people who have no particular interest in insurance, who don't have an insurance degree, and I'm assuming you don't either. And basically people who have not committed to a career in insurance yet. And the biggest problem that those managers have is the constant replacing of those people as they come into insurance, don't like it, and move on. So the biggest thing you can do, if you can show at least some knowledge of insurance, if you go and read a little bit of the Insurance Journal or a little bit of Insurance Nerds or any other source, and come and make a good case for, number one, I have some understanding of what insurance does, because you'll be surprised how often people don't for entry level jobs. And number two, this is not just a job. I want a career in insurance, and this is why. And I want a long-term relationship with the company. I want to grow within the company, within the industry. That is the best thing you can do for an entry-level job, because you're de-risking the number one problem they have, which is people that don't stick to the industry, that are here just temporarily while they find the real job. If you're coming in for a non-entry level job, so let's say you spent a few years working in a different industry and now you're coming in for more of a middle level role. It's hard. Basically, prepare yourself for a long job search. The average job search in insurance probably takes 6 to 9 months, and it takes a couple hundred applications. It's not you, it's us. We are bad at hiring as an industry, and it'll get better. This is a great industry to work in. It's hard to get in, and it's hard to make moves once you're here, but it is a fantastic industry when it comes to long-term career potential. Don't give up just because you've applied to 30 different jobs and you haven't gotten a single interview, or because you've had two or three interviews and you haven't gotten an offer. It doesn't mean we don't want you. It's just we are bad at hiring. We're slow at hiring, and that's when it makes sense checking in with chat with Tony. I'm happy to give you more direct advice specifically for you. We're just a hard industry to get into, basically.
And you and I had a little bit of that conversation while we were getting ready for the interview of the The industry is not for the faint of heart, and it's a very relationship heavy industry. And if you're willing to put the time in, it's wonderful, and you're going to create a lot of really great relationships. But it's a little
And,
bit of an uphill climb when you first
and,
get started.
and it's wonderful in many ways. It's interesting. You'll never run out of stuff to learn, because absolutely everything needs insurance. You're doing something good for the world. You'll make good money doing it, and it is super stable. We are recession proof. Uh, Downsizings are rare within insurance, and even if you do get downsized, the experience that you've gained is valuable. But I've seen the industry survive the '09 recession without too much pain, and then the COVID recession was incredible. We as an industry, we employed more people at the end of 2020 than at the beginning of 2020. Right? Yeah, hiring slowed down for sure, but we did not have massive downsizing that other industries had. And why? Because even when the economy slows down, people need insurance. You might not buy a new car, you might not start a new business, you might not buy a new house, but you need to continue insuring your old car, your old business, your old house. So we're a very, very, very recession proof and stable industry.
Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk through this, Tony. I think you offered some really great insights from both sides of the equation. And I think where talent and technology collide, we're going to continue to see this in the insurance industry, but also every industry across the board. And a lot of the tips that you gave are actually pretty universal as well. Solid advice to learn about the industry you're applying to and that type of thing as well. But I want to encourage everybody who's watching, if they're not already, to follow you on LinkedIn, as well as follow the Insurance Nerds. And if you are someone that's looking to get involved in the industry, Tony said it, but schedule a time with him. He's a wonderful person to meet and can offer you some really great advice. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation, or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.
For having me anytime.